Hi, I'm H's Cores, and welcome to another episode of EU5. I am starting a new campaign as Serbia on the 1.1 Rossback beta patch that was released earlier this week. Serbia is a nation that I've been trying to get off the ground with some of their flavor before the patch came out. And I had a couple of missteps as I was kind of going along the way, right? I went to war with Byzantium and then immediately made them my vassals. And then I realized making them my vassals and I don't directly control that land, it doesn't trigger the event to immediately turn them into the Serbian Empire. So I had to kind of go back, wait to hold that land in proper Greek territory, mainly around the Aegean Sea, not Constantinople, but Thessaly, and all of the provinces that kind of come through. So once the event fires, it kind of lists all of the war score capabilities from a town perspective. And then when we're going through the setup of the campaign, pretty similar, right? Obviously AI aggression has changed. I've just left it at normal, just to see how normal kind of reacts to in the new playthrough. So we'll click through, get started, keep it on Iron Man. I don't know if beta patches allow you to get achievements, but I just kind of left it on Iron Man. I usually do that as a default anyway. So pretty standard setup from a tech perspective. Doesn't appear to be anything new going through in 1437, but go through my initial read of all the valuable tech that's in the existing advanced tree. Don't necessarily need construction, but figure by the time I get towards the end of that, it'll be ready to take the scholarly treaties and take some of the valuable tech there as I wait for the other ages to spread to my lands, likely in Italy or the professional armies can spawn in a number of places, but I've seen it mainly spawn in France or England or sometimes Netherlands. But the other ones are in Italy, so it's a little bit closer to me where it can kind of start to spread to my provinces sooner. So when we start the campaign, Serbia does have, they don't have cities to start. Obviously Constantinople is a city. After you take Byzantium from Constantinople, there will be an event that triggers in the 1370s to allow me to move my capital to Constantinople. As long as you don't rename your province to the Serbian name for Constantinople, you just keep it as Constantinople. So I think there's advantages to renaming it, but that's a trap. You don't get that free move and free core on Constantinople, because without it, once we kind of start to integrate them, it becomes quite expensive to integrate that province at the start of the campaign. In terms of that first law, I usually go with regulated export. I've done export ban, but you get a ton of inflation with the number of raw materials that you have, and you have a ton of access to silver at the start of the 5 provinces. And then you get a gold province that spawns as well. So there's a lot of opportunity to get those materials. So I don't need the unlimited or limited exports. I just went for the trade just because I'll have a lot of those resources. And trade is pretty valuable in this newest patch. Going through my building out my economy, I'm pushing the minting to right up until I start to gain inflation, and you have to constantly play with that because you gain as you build more resources and access to silver. The inflation starts to spike as you rely on that. So that's another reason why I didn't take that unlimited exports, whereas in other nations that's more profitable. But you'll be in inflation trouble at the start of the campaign until you start to snowball your economy in non-silver and gold resources and buildings and tax. In terms of estates, I do the standard crown power and lower food costs, and then give out a couple of texts that, powerful dioceses for the clergy, for the burghers. Their urban development helps just with that rolling development that it stacks. The commoners, they have the communal lands, which you want to repeal as soon as possible. I give out the militias just to get a little bit more manpower, which will be needed in future wars until I have a standing army to rely on. There is an event once your king dies, if you don't get your stab and legitimacy up as high as possible, you can get into a pretty nasty event where you get a ton of the decline of your empire. It happens, or the curse of my king. So it just becomes like a constant endless death spiral of you pick an event that's either you lose legitimacy or you lose stability, and the only way to get out of the event is to have high stability and legitimacy. So it's kind of counterintuitive that if you're losing 7 stab in every one of those events, like how do you get out of it? So I think it basically, you get it until that next ruler dies. So it's ideally it's getting those up as high as possible for my next the next in line for the throne. And I think I lose my son in the Black Death in this run, but my daughter has a high enough administrative knowledge that the crown power stays high, and I avoid that negative event, right? And then from the automations, I click my standard where I automate some of like the leading of some of the estate buildings and some of the other stuff, but trade I've kind of just left default to kind of build that out and grow with what is needed to run my economy.
The other thing you want to do is improve opinions with Bulgaria, who will ally you pretty quickly into the campaign. I also try to improve opinions with Hungary and Naples, just because they're the 2 big threats, and I just can't take them on until I grow much larger. Bulgaria will ally you, but they will cancel that alliance a lot of times in that first war. And then you want to kind of grow your RGOs, particularly the silver provinces, as soon as you possibly can, right? It's fortunately Novo, that one province, has an event that turns it into a town, so you'll cap out at 3 in terms of how much you can build there. I also try to build a jeweler's guild here, just based on the amount of silver that I'm producing, so it will generate quite a bit of profit. The Turkish event obviously generates as a country in the Balkans, so it's just kind of initial setup to grow some of that. I'm losing a little bit of money at the start, but that's okay. You want to kind of max that out. I'm not taxing the clergy, just to get my research to improve as much as possible there, by making them happy. So that grows, and you can see that event fires almost immediately. So I have that ability to go to war. I do notice that I don't have enough diplomats, so I have to kind of wait a couple of months. But as long as you own all of those provinces, you don't have to integrate them. You just have to own all 5 of those provinces. You will get the event to become the Emperor of Serbia, and then you can release those provinces as vassals, just because they'll make better use of that land until you have more of an ability to establish control. So I skipped ahead 2 months, able to get my diplomat that I wasn't paying for at the time, and you go to war. And it's a pretty straightforward war with myself and and Bulgaria, they have a decent sized army, but they seem to be paper thin. They kind of are easily destroyed by both of our armies. I think we have stronger kings than they do, so with them leading the charge. So I ultimately tried to siege down their vassal adherents so they don't constantly spawn up like 200-300 stack armies and then just unsiege the land that I siege down here, so it kind of eliminates them, and then kind of move eastward into Constantinople. I wouldn't have an ability to get to their other lands, particularly the ones in like southern Greece. They have some provinces. So as long as I siege down all of these lands and try to start to siege down the Constantinople, which is a really difficult fort to take. I've had it in instances where it's taken like 1,500 days just to siege it. So as you can see, Bulgaria actually was able to send their troops down to those provinces there, so they were able to siege it down. And then it's just kind of getting to their capital. You see, I actually got caught separated on my troops from Bulgaria, from Byzantine. So they sieged that down. I was able to take that land myself and start the siege on the capital. Now I'm just kind of chasing their troops as they kind of come to the land, or then send troops to like Athens area or like Thessaly. So they're constantly moving their troops back over to the other side of the strait there, and then use their boats to kind of ferry them behind me to unsiege the land. So it is a bit of a frustrating war, just because they, without any forts besides Constantinople, they kind of just send things around, and you're constantly moving your armies to combat wherever they kind of land on the already sieged land. But the fort itself in Constantinople takes a long time to even get to progress, and then sometimes you can be stuck on 14% siege for years, if you're not lucky. So I decided to not even take Constantinople, just because of how long it was, and I was starting to lose some of my own armies in the war. As you can see, I lost 4,000 troops between myself and I think in Bulgaria, but I was losing a lot of my army, and then with attrition, potentially losing siege progress. So lived to fight another day. I got all of the lands at least, and then I immediately border there on Byzantium. So the good news is, for the next war, I'll be right in position to take Byzantium, and I'm still able to get that event to trigger to occupy and take over the lands. And you'll see that kind of come forward right here. So you can see there's a coalition joining. So dawn of the new empire comes through. Makes most sense. Obviously, you can take some stability at the make haste, but makes sense to become the empire of Serbia once you hold on to all those lands. And then you can see I'm a number 50 power of the world now, and it like immediately jumps to like the top 10. So within 3 years, you can become a great power pretty easily by capturing those lands. And then I have an extra cabinet member that is now established, and then you can, now that you're in the empire, now you can kind of release those lands as fiefdoms and vassals, so that they're able to establish or utilize the land to its fullest capabilities. Whereas for myself, I'd have to integrate it, and even when I integrate it, it'll have very little value. So and then it allows me to kind of grow my overall power base as they're able to raise levies themselves, and send it off and help support me in future wars. So we skip ahead to when the next age kind of spawns, and in 1342 I took admin. I know that they've nerfed that a little bit from the proximity, but I still felt it made the most sense from everything. And then as we skip ahead to 1347, peace truce has expired. So it's time to go to war with them, and then ultimately capture all of Byzantium. I looked out in this campaign because Byzantium is a little bit stronger. I've seen runs where Ottomans came right in and wiped them, but in this run, Byzantium actually wiped out the Ottomans pretty bad and captured a lot more in Anatolia. Um, and it might be the benefit of leaving them with Byzantium in its entirety, because they're not weak right there, but they still have a lot of their power in those two provinces that they have there, in addition to the lands they have in Asia Minor. So with that, they were able to kind of thwart some of those initial wars, which allowed me to swoop in, grab the remaining land in the Balkans. I think, unfortunately, Bulgaria snakes one of the counties away from me because it gets unsieged. So I'm not able to take all of the land. And they're able to kind of get it before me. Yeah, you can see that one land, so then they don't transfer it to me, which is frustrating. And I think they are able to get that land in a future war as well. So I'm not able to get that land until I'm going to war with Bulgaria much further down the line. But it's again, it's sitting on the capital. But now that they don't have those provinces behind me, they are not able to kind of do that same strategy where they go behind my enemy lines and unsiege their lands. It's just kind of more of a linear path on War 2, and able to get the remaining lands in the Anatolia side, with the exception of that one province that I left to them and was not giving it to Bulgaria. So you can see they have that one piece, and then we kind of take it. And you also notice in that last Byzantium war, I lost my heir. My son died in the Black Death, and then I also, my ruler died as well, which unfortunately, fortunately, I had my stability and legitimacy. I think my legitimacy was at 100, and stability was high enough where that curse of my king didn't air, or didn't run, so I was able to get there. But if you can see here, Bulgaria actually was able to snake into that one province because I guess Byzantium lost a war to some of the Anatolian nations and released that nation as its own, as Adern, and Bulgaria then snaked there before I could. I actually had a claim on it, and I was just waiting to get my diplomats in, or paying for my diplomats, and they declared before I could, unfortunately. So I lost that one province, or that one county in the province I owned, or my vassal owned, which didn't allow me to go to war. So we skip ahead a little bit. I get the event of Constantinople becoming the jewel of Rome, where it becomes my capital and core province. Integrating Byzantium is quite slow. It was going to take like 300 years before that, so that speeds it up much sooner. As Constantinople is a core, I just at the core of the remaining territories. We've kind of skipped ahead a couple of decades. I've been working to kind of annex some of the immediate nations next to me. I've also been trying to create a city here so that I can create that that local governor in my previous capital, just so that it allows me to establish more control. Because that'll start to slowly dwindle down, and then I'll start to get some control over the Constantinople provinces once I have the ability to integrate. So the goal is to push people towards my old capital to get it to the size to build a city there. So we skip ahead a little bit. I was in a couple of civil wars, as well as Bulgaria took me in a long war with Wallachia, who has quite a bit of difficult forts to siege. So they kind of delayed like what I can kind of do from my next phases of the war. I wanted to go to war again with Ragusa. I went with them previously just to gain their um, trade, so I can push their trade from Ragusa to my previous capital. So I went back to war with them. I thought this would be just another easy war, but apparently they raised like 6,000 mercenaries, and I didn't notice it. And like they wiped all of my levies and my vassals' levies. So I was like, oh, I actually thought I was gonna have to wipe peace, but eventually my vassals were able to support me enough to wear them down, and then I got there. Croatia's also in this war, but I have no ability to gain access through Hungary right now, as they still view me as a rival. So they're not giving me access. I have no way to get to the lands other than that one province. And then I think they end up going to war with Hungary in the middle of this, so they wipe peace out. And then I'm able to take that one province of Ragusa, which is valuable but is also annoying. It's that one province, but over the next 100 years I go into like several rebellions, so it might be worth deleting that fort on another playthrough, just because it's kind of annoying to siege that down each time. But I eventually get them sieged and take that one last province on the coast there. I then worked to move eastward into Anatolia. I saw an opportunity to attack some of the nations over there. I have superior numbers advantages between myself and my vassal swarm, so I'm able to easily overrun them, despite the fact that they have quite a bit of troops. I think they only had 1,000 men, and they were at war already, so it was kind of area and opportunity. It allowed me to expand to the Anatolia side. I originally tried to integrate some of those lands, but they are quite rebellious, so it kind of makes sense, right? I'm annexing people that are of Sunni religion, so not going to be the most loyal. Eventually, once I start to integrate more of my other vassals, I'm able to then create new vassals on that side. But I have a foothold on the Anatolia side, with the ability to start going after other nations like the Ottomans. I'm also trying to clean up some more of the nations in proper Greek territories. Sicily is got a couple of vassals there, so I wanted to take them over before Naples ultimately annexes all of Sicily and then gets all that territory, because Naples is a lot stronger than I am. So sole intention of taking those on. I think Naples actually declares simultaneously to me, but luckily they don't take any of these provinces, or they don't take all of Sicily. Might be too costly from a province perspective. But once I'm able to kind of siege everything down, wait for Naples to take their peace deal, I'm able to then take over the rest of the territories there. As you see, Sicily is now one province minor over there, so Naples will get them likely in the next war that they declare. But here you can see I'm just kind of taking over the remaining balance and creating a vassal in the Athens area with some rich territory. One advantage to eventually letting some of the provinces grow in rebellion, especially on the Anatolia side, is that it allows you to declare on nations outside of your country. So Ottomans comes in and protects the rebellion that in their proper territory, right? If they have cores on it, they'll be willing to help the rebels. So Ottomans had a stronger alliance block, but they're not calling in their rivals, as they're joining as co-belligerent, or non-co-belligerent I should say. So easy enough to kind of wipe them. They don't have a lot, but they had more from an allies perspective. So I can take some more land. The intention was to take all of the coastland and like the straits there, to own more of the sea tiles, right? I don't really have intention to go inland. I just kind of wanted to create an empire that takes proper Balkan territory and then all of these sea tiles if possible. And then following that, it's another war down in the Greek area where I'm looking to finish my expansion as much as possible into the proper Greek territories with some of the islands there that have opportunity. So this was a 2-province minor that I was able to kind of quickly eat up outside of Athens and then just kind of feed it to my vassals and let them kind of deal with it. That really wraps up the first part of this series, right? We've created ourselves empire here in in Serbia. I've really started to play a little bit tall in my area and use my vassals to build some power base so that I can take on much larger enemies. I still have Bulgaria as an ally, but they'll eventually break that alliance with me. So part 2, you'll see where I'll go through a series of wars with Bulgaria, who actually declares on me, but I'm also able to eventually secure an alliance with Hungary and eventually get an alliance with Naples once I can get strong enough. Both have risks because I do have areas of their interests, right? They both have desires to kind of expand into my lands, but the Hungary alliance was timely because it was right before Bulgaria still declared on me, which didn't make a lot of sense, right? Bulgaria eventually declares despite the fact that I'm much stronger, but maybe they're just not taking into consideration any alliances that I have that are willing to come into the wars on a defensive side. So that'll be in part 2, right, where I'll start to take over more of the proper Balkan territory and finish off the expansions into Greece, capture more of the Anatolian coastlines, and start to annex a lot of the vassals there in the proper Greek territory. As I start to grow, I'm overextended on my culture, mainly because I accepted Greece just because they're the predominant culture. I've tried to start shifting the culture of some of my vassals so that they start culture converting some of this territory before I annex them. But I was just kind of being weary of doing that too much because it takes a while to get their loyalty up. So if you do 1 or 2 at a time over the course of 20 years, it takes to get them back to being loyal subjects. And that's a little bit more complex on the Anatolia side because you have to actually do the culture and enforce religion in most of those instances to get them back to Orthodox from Sunni. I think they're actually Greek but have converted to Orthodox by the Turks and other Asian minor nations. So it's a little bit slower. The next one you play a little bit more tall, so a little bit more lag in between wars, but really start to grow, start to build my local governors. I have that one in my old capital in central Serbia, which gives you that 80% control in a key market and key city it has to be in. And I eventually take enough territory from Bulgaria where I can create a second governorship there. And possibly expansion down the line using the naval governor mechanics to maybe expand elsewhere in the Mediterranean. So more to come there, but if this is of interest, it's a fun playthrough in this new beta patch where I took a small nation and starting to create my own empire in this area, right? It's obviously a hotbed of historical significance, and I really want to become the dominant player within that region. So hope everyone enjoyed this. If you do like it, please follow along and subscribe, and comment on how you think I did and where potentially I can make some improvements for future campaigns. Thanks everyone.